Nearly got it. You can text 81771. We're joined by Dr. Jennifer Cassidy, who lectures in diplomacy and international law at Oxford and was a diplomatic attaché to Ireland's permanent mission to the UK in the past. Welcome, Jennifer. Dr. Alexander Titov, lecturer in modern history at Queen's. Welcome, Alexander. Good to have you back with us. And Erol Morkoç, who's a spokesperson for Republicans overseas. Erol, good to have you with us as well. Welcome, all of you. Before I come to the state visit with some of our callers, Jennifer, what did you make of that meeting on Friday?
Well, what didn't I make of it along with the rest of the world? It was extremely difficult to watch, along with, all the reporters in the room saying, this is something that they had never witnessed before, the bashing of a strong ally of the United States, on the world stage. And, we have seen and heard with the evidence post let's say, interview or meeting that this was indeed a staged ambush. One of the key reasons for this is we have seen from Rachel Maddow's investigatory journalism that RT, the Russian network, were actually there in the room streaming this live to Russia. And when the state secretary of the press secretary of the US was asked about this the next day, they said, they've no idea how RT got into the room. And, as Rachel Maddow says, people are just sneaking into the Oval Office now, to stream this. So what we saw there is, and if you notice when it all unraveled, it was at the very end, and even many of the, pro-Trump reporters who were in the room were in on this. This was an absolute planned ambush, and it was extremely difficult, to witness and watch.
Well, Reuters were not in the room. Associated Press were not in the room. But as you say, exactly. TASS did have a pass into that room. Though I got to wonder here, Alexander, I mean, two things can be true at the same time. If you take the view that Donald Trump is on the wrong page on all of this, he was wrong to call Zelensky a dictator. He's wrong to be siding with Putin so closely in all of this. Even if that is your view, can't you look at that meeting and say, Zelensky messed that up badly? If you're going in to sign a minerals deal in the White House, you have your arguments in private. You don't take the bait. You do not descend into that kind of shouting match, especially with a president like Donald Trump, who isn't going to take that.
Yeah, I think it's what's interesting about this episode is that people have almost immediately have very definitive opinions, based on their emotions and, to be honest, based on their kind of preferences for political parties. So if you hate Trump, you blame Trump for everything. If you don't like Zelensky, you blame him for it. But kind of taking a broader view, it's the fact is that Ukraine is dependent on United States aid, and the whole purpose of the Zelensky visit was to make sure that the new administration at least listens to Ukraine on this. The end result of this was the exact opposite of it. Now they're not only talking terms, but they had a public row like that. It's so bottom line. I mean, for Zelensky, it was very important to come up, avoid it. And you can. To be honest, I don't buy that line. Previous speaker was talking about it was all staged.
That it was staged, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think if you look at it, it's whole episode. I mean, there was. Element when it all went wrong, it essentially was when Zelensky tried to challenge Vance's whole idea of diplomacy. So there was a substantive argument about whether diplomacy should be
and whether it had been tried in the past already.
Or whether you can't deal with Putin because
in the
it's pointless.
Yes.
Yeah,
all right. Erol, welcome, Erol. I'll bring you in on this. In a sense, from a diplomatic point of view, if you're focused on the end goal of getting an agreement, of making progress, that meeting's just kind of full of noise. We could talk about it for the next few weeks if we want to, but it wouldn't really help us, would it? Because the point now is what comes next. And Donald Trump apparently is expecting some kind of apology, whether that's public or in private. And I would have thought that there may be some people advising President Zelensky that it would be a good thing to express regret to President Trump for the way that meeting went. There, you can find the words to do so in order to get back on track, because there is still, Erol, a deal to be done.
Yes, I agree, and I think it would be wise. I mean, originally President Trump had offered a win-win situation, which would have provided American security, a fund to rebuild Ukraine, and a JV partnership for the rare earth minerals. And Zelensky failed to read the room as he should have, and now he's in a situation. I don't think he needs to apologize. I don't think he should be sorry for conducting himself as he did. I mean, he's there representing his ideology. This was one of the most transparent examples of diplomacy anybody's ever been able to witness. And perhaps airing your grievances in public isn't the worst thing between allies to get to the brass tacks. So I think perhaps behind closed doors, maybe some, recalcitrant comments or whatnot. But I don't think he's looking for a public apology. I think he's looking to get back to the table, sign this rare earths deal.
Well, he has publicly said he's looking for a public apology.
Well, I mean, but like, how deep does that have to be? Like,
Sure.
I think Zelensky coming out and saying, I wish things had gone better. I apologize if I had been disrespectful. I think that would be enough. I don't think he's looking for, on bent knee. So I think Zelensky just misplayed the first. I mean, look at Keir Starmer, how well he went in there, how he played his role, what he got out of that situation. You're going in there dealing with Donald Trump. Donald Trump is representing the people who elected him, and the people who elected him wanted to see Donald Trump stand up to Zelensky in that situation. That might not play well for an international audience, but that is what you're dealing with. So know the people you're dealing with, and things will be much less friction.
And Jennifer, the consequence of this noisy encounter playing out in front of the TV cameras across the world is, as Erol says, surely that people who want to offer one narrative can offer it. Others who want to offer a different narrative can offer it. The same press conference provides all the evidence you need for saying Zelensky's a warmonger, he's erratic and he's not interested in peace, or Donald Trump is a Russian asset or a Russian spy who's in the pay of, or compromised sufficiently to be in the pay of Vladimir Putin, and he's doing his business in the room. Whichever view you take, you could superimpose that onto that meeting. But it doesn't really get us anywhere, does it?
No, and I agree with both speakers on that. And when I was noting that it was staged, and I still fully stand by that with the empirical evidence showing it. This is not me taking or being anti-Trump or being anti-Zelensky or pro either. You're right. It doesn't get us anywhere. And, from what you previously had from one of the interviews before this, just before we came on, I think Keir Starmer made a very good statement. I'm paraphrasing here, but he said, I'm going to whatever I'm going to do is I'm going to ask myself, is this going to bring about a long-lasting peace? And if that is so, then I'll do it. I'm a complete pragmatist to the core, and this is how we need to take it. So, yes,
and one can interpret that as well when you look at the way in which Keir Starmer went into that room. Some of his critics say he looked obsequious, and bringing out the letter from the king was all quite embarrassing on this side of the Atlantic for some people. But if you're doing business with Donald Trump, you have to understand what doing business with Donald Trump will involve. And the Oval Office in American cultural life has an almost sacred space quality to it. And even the decision not to wear a suit, I know he was showing solidarity with his soldiers. And I know that Winston Churchill did the same thing during the Second World War. Yeah. But he was asked in advance of the meeting, apparently, by the other side, the American side, it would be a good idea to wear a suit. These are decisions you have to take. But if your diplomatic goal is to get that deal done that day, then don't have a fight with the president on live TV. It's not going to work out well for you. 03030 80 55 55. Brian is in Enniskillen. Hi, Brian.
Hi there, William.
Welcome.
Right. Well, the first thing I would say to Zelensky, if he is going to ever wear a suit, the person in the Oval Office that challenged him, I would advise him to avoid the car crash of a suit that the gentleman had on him. Anyway, so let's move it from that. It was awful. However, Zelensky did, I suppose, walk into some of the questions. Let's remember, 40 odd to 45 minutes of that interview went off extremely well, very polite.
Yeah.
And Zelensky was able to show photographs and so forth of the destruction that was there.
The prisoners of war, the emaciated bodies of those prisoners.
Yes. Yeah, and we cannot forget that. I believe that the Vice President may have been just waiting for his moment, based, I believe, on what I have read, and I trust what I read in some of the trustworthy papers and so forth, that I think there was a bit of a gripe. I do believe, from what I've been told, that Vance wasn't too pleased with some of Zelensky's responses directly to him. I don't know for a fact that that's the case.
It's also clear from a subsequent interview that Zelensky was irritated by the fact that the Vice President engaged with him at all. He said he has his own meetings. I was there as a president to meet the president. There are certain diplomatic niceties to be observed on that side of the equation too.
Yeah, yes, that's quite right. And I suspect that Trump will have a chat with Vance about overstepping his authority within the Oval Office if things are done properly. William, in relation to the invite from the King,
yeah,
it would be, in my opinion, the worst thing for us as a nation to do would be to dig our heels in and say no. It's like throwing the toy out of the pram.
So don't rescind it, go forward with that, and maybe try to wrap it into some kind of diplomatic next move.
Yes, and there is no date on it. There is no definitive date yet, but the real point I would make
is... An important point, yeah.
Exactly, and this is where we need shrewd diplomacy. But if it were cancelled now or in the near future, can you just see the glee on Putin's face? The ultimate liar on the stage. Seconds before he invaded Ukraine, he stood up and said there was no invasion, no war about to take place. This is a man that has spent his whole life with coercive, controlling lies of state warfare. And that is the type of thing I think should be reminded to the Trump and his crew on most visits, if you like.
Thank you.
We just cannot cancel this meeting. This would I think it would cause thousands more lives in Ukraine.
Thank you very much, Brian. Much appreciated. Some of your texts on this, 81771. Eamon says, do you think Trump will accept sloppy seconds after Zelensky met King Charles? I believe he will not. What you think, Eamon, that Donald Trump may rescind the second state visit? I don't know. Isn't Trump, once elected, meant to represent all the people of the United States, not just those who elected him? Yes, of course, is the point. I'm not sure which point you're making beyond that, but please text again, 81771. Stephen in Banbridge says, I think it was over for Volodymyr Zelensky campaigning for Biden, which JD pointed out, as well as the raw minerals deal and more political stuff, which I don't have a clue about. That was raised in this meeting. You went to Pennsylvania. Well, in fact, he visited both Donald Trump and Biden. That's another fact that one needs to bear in mind, that when Zelensky visited, he did actually visit the Trump team as well, Erol, didn't he?
Yes, I believe he did. And I think that there was just a certain aspect of the two camps where if
Let's be realistic, he looked more comfortable with the Democrats than with Trump, right? Let's just be honest about that.
Absolutely. And I think it comes from a game theory perspective because he's fighting a war against a brutal aggressor. So the Republicans were going to go for peace directly, and peace means concessions, and it means detente, and it means trying to find some sort of end to the war. The Democrats were much more okay with prolonging this conflict, extending it multiple years out, which would potentially give Ukraine more leverage. But Donald Trump and the Republican voters were not willing to bankroll a war, and nor did they want to see more bodies step up. So I think that's the split there.
Alexander, just finally on this, on where we go from here. Obviously, the European coalition want to have a deal which will involve peacekeeping troops on the territory of Ukraine with a US backstop. What is their chance of getting a backstop at this point from Donald Trump?
Well, I think the answer to this is 0 to both European troops in Ukraine after the war and to US backstop for them. Europeans, I'm afraid, just talking about themselves and their latest plan about truce and then troops is just missing. I mean, the missing kind of one bit in all their plans is that to have a truce, to have an agreement, you would have to involve Russia at some point. And Russia has said, quite clearly with Lavrov, Putin, whoever you want to talk to, down the years and also recently, that they're absolutely not going to accept any NATO country troops and any flag in Ukraine. And in fact, one of the stated goals in the whole of this war was to sever Ukraine from NATO. So I just see how they're gonna. I mean, these discussions about European troops is just simply kind of detached from this hard reality that there's no compelling.
You don't think there's any possibility?
Well, you need to compel Russia. You need to have Russia lose the war. At the moment, it's not losing the war. So we're having negotiations now because Ukraine is not winning. The previous speaker said that, the Biden strategy was to kind of strengthen the Ukraine because it will get a better position in over 2 years. But I don't over in the future. But I mean. Since 2023, when Ukraine was at its peak power, it has been losing that power over Russia. Russia has been advancing, and the economy is being destroyed, and so forth. So each year since 2023, Ukraine's been in a weaker position. So I don't see how that's going to change, particularly now that there has been a row between the United States and Ukraine. United States with either decreasing or withdrawing its support. There are subjective and objective factors because basically, very unlikely any administration would pass another $60 billion funding for Ukraine anyway. So there is kind of this idea that, the war has run its course and we don't want to spend on it anymore. And the Europeans are really talking just among themselves, I'm afraid. There's no kind of engagement with the fact reality that, you will have to involve Russia, and Russia will not tolerate European troops.
Well, President Trump says both sides are going to have to give something.
Well, I mean, he says that. I think they haven't even started really negotiations.
No.
They just had a,
We're at the minerals deal stage.
Well, mineral jet stage was another, kind of symbolic gesture, I would say. But all those things are very, very preliminary things, and at some point you have to engage with the Russians.
I wonder, Erol. I mean, obviously, Erol, there's a difference between peace and lasting peace, right? We all accept that. You could have a ceasefire that collapses in a year or whatever. You could have another invasion. So there's a difference between peace and enduring peace. And it's interesting that Keir Starmer keeps using the phrase lasting peace or enduring peace, because that's what he's after. And he believes you can only have lasting peace with security. A security deal of some kind that gives Ukraine confidence about its own future. Now, President Trump, Errol, seems to think that this minerals deal could provide that kind of security, because if US contractors and personnel are on the ground in Ukraine engaging in exploration around rare earth minerals, President Trump says Russia will not invade, because if Russia were to do so, that would trigger a response from the United States. Is that your understanding of the deal?
I think that's how President Trump is looking at it. And he's also looking at it in a very generous way with a 50-50 split. No mining company and its investors would ever do that deal. Most mining companies would do 90-10. So that deal is implicitly designed to help the Ukrainian economy and to do economic development in country. On top of that, it would probably come with U.S. contractors and then the security apparatus around that. What we don't want to do is have NATO push its borders up to the border of Russia. Now, I'll say this: if the Europeans can somehow actually get together a ground force of, say, 30 to 50,000 soldiers, and they really were going to commit the money and the logistics and everything to do that, I mean, maybe Trump could be persuaded to do the backstop air cover, but I don't think Putin would go for it. So I think Donald Trump's solution is much more economic driven, and there's a lot of economic concessions that he can perhaps work with Vladimir Putin on. As well, keep in mind, Donald Trump is concerned about the hundreds of thousands of prisoners that Vladimir Putin has taken. So potentially getting those people released, getting this JV mineral deal could ameliorate the need for having to put this massive amount of troops that I'm not confident that the Europeans could actually muster.
And let's not forget those kidnapped children, Ukrainian children, thousands of them taken away from their families, renamed and placed in Russia with other families. It's an extraordinary story, a war crime and a crime against humanity in itself. Jennifer, we're at an impasse then. If Keir Starmer can get Donald Trump to provide the air cover, the Starlink, the intelligence, whatever's necessary to constitute a backstop, we're away. But even if you get to that point, you've got Vladimir Putin says, I will not tolerate the presence of any troops from any NATO countries, no matter which badge they're wearing in their caps. I will not tolerate it on the territory of Ukraine, as if he gets to decide that as the invading force. What then is the diplomatic option?
Well, if I had an answer to that question, I think
Well, it's
I don't think
catch-22, isn't it?
Yeah,
because we're essentially saying the aggressor here, Russia, can walk into Ukraine and then it can call the shots forever in terms of any peace deal.
Yes, but I think we're all rightly taking the line here of pragmatic sense. And even though the Oval Office meeting, as we noted, was extremely heightened and emotional, going back to the pragmatic aspect, if there is to be, and to use the words again, a lasting and enduring peace, history has shown us that no matter what happens, there will have to be some sort of role that Russia will be playing in this peace deal. Just like there was
has to be.
In my view, but of course there was right outcry that initially when Ukraine weren't even going to be involved in those talks. Russia, yes, of course they were the aggressor. They impeded on the territorial sovereignty. But pragmatically, there's going to be no long-lasting, enduring peace without any Russian voice, without any Russian involvement. We are just going to see, as the other two speakers noted, a prolonged and continuous onslaught of this war that Ukraine are losing at the moment. And so, as we heard before from one of your other interviews, this is a wake-up call for Europe, and they've needed this wake-up call, since Obama. I'm not just putting this on Trump alone, Obama, Biden, and now Trump, but this is a wake-up call for Europe to get its defense together. It has no other option than to continue to deal with the US.
Good luck with that, Jennifer, because the alarms have been going off for about 15 years.
Exactly. And that's one of the reasons why I left diplomacy. The ability to actually make that change in that bureaucratic machine is next to impossible. And as your interview speakers rightly said, if this isn't the wake-up call, and if they don't do something after this, then I don't know what will wake up and I'm a fan of the EU, a big proponent of them, but there needs to be a wake-up call on their defense, on their spending, and they can't be I don't use the word freeloading. They have put huge money into Ukraine, but they do need to become more consolidated in their own policy formation and in their own defence spending, up to 2 to 3%. And this will take, as noted previously, 2 to 3 years even to fill in the potholes of this defence. But we cannot keep relying so heavily on the US. And that is what, this is in no way endorsing Trump, but that is what Trump is saying. He is using, entrenchment and deal making. That's his diplomacy at the moment. And he's saying we are no longer going to be the police or the kind of the...
He's using that language of isolationist language. But,
exactly.
But on this point, Erol, I mean, it's quite clear, isn't it, what Vladimir Putin wants out of this. He wants to turn Ukraine into another Belarus. He wants to have either a puppet state or a vassal state. He's very keen to get shot of President Zelensky. He's very keen to have a change of leadership. That would be his ultimate, that would be a great outcome for him, to have another Belarus called Ukraine. But there are many people who worry that Donald Trump is assisting him in achieving that by simply giving him everything he wants. And it looks very suspicious to many people that a US president, someone that we once called the leader of the free world, that's a phrase that's now been binned, right? But that a US president would be so obsequious in response to an invading power like Russia.
Well, I think it speaks to a multipolar world order. I mean, the United States just lost a 20-year battle with the Taliban. So tell all the American mothers whose kids died for territory that was lost. I think one thing for your listeners to really grasp the scope here, underneath the east of Ukraine is $20 trillion of resources. Let's say Vladimir Putin has lost 500,000 soldiers. That's $40 million per head. So Vladimir Putin doesn't want all of Ukraine. He wants the part with the resources, and he's already got it.
He's got a bit of it,
And now, so the only option you have is to now send hundreds of thousands of American and British soldiers to their deaths to fight for this, or realize that the aggressor has, on his terms, on what he deems victory, won what he wants.
Though Keir Starmer's
so now,
argument is no American boots will be on the ground.
Well, that's all well and good, but if American air support is there, then we are on the brink of World War III. And I think that's pretty serious. When Russia has hypersonic missiles that can put a nuclear missile in London in 5 minutes,
right?
I think it's a pretty serious thing. They have 5th generation stealth fighter technology. This is not.
And here is the central problem of nuclear diplomacy, right there. If a nuclear power like Russia decides to do what it wants and invade another country, other countries are unable to stop them because of the constant threat of nuclear war by engagement.
Yeah, I mean, that's a serious thing.
So that means Putin
and
can do what he wants anywhere. That means China can do what it wants with Taiwan. What a lesson for China, that America won't step up for Taiwan either.
It's going to be an interesting situation with Taiwan as things move into drone warfare, especially. That distance on the Taiwan Strait becomes almost impossible to close.
Thank you all.
So it's
I really appreciate it. You've been very helpful. Thank you, Erol, Morkoç, Dr. Alexander Titov, and Dr. Jennifer Cassidy. Thomas has been waiting a while.